Hey, this is Pierre Dacot working at Planet Technologies. Let's talk about file migration into Office 365. I've been lately involved in several file migration projects, and it requires some OCM. So let me tell you how I approach this. So first of all, I think the first thing to do is to do a change scope, meaning what is changing, where you or what are you trying to migrate? Are they file shares, box, Dropbox? Where are your files? What kind of files are there? Or how they organized? Is it, you have one folder per person where they can back up their personal documents. You have shared folders where people work together in the department or in a project, or what can it be? Do you have a folder where everybody has access and can do everything, like a drop folder where you know there's no limitation in terms of how people can access to the folder? So you need to analyze this, and probably you need to run some tool to also figure out the amount of documents, if there are any problems with the name of the documents that won't be supported in Office 365. So try to understand the meaning of the structure of the documents, the kind of documents, how they're organized, um, by discussing with IT, analyzing with scripts what's in your file shares. So scan your file shares, see who has permissions, when did these file shares change last time, are there a lot of people accessing these file shares, are there a lot of permissions, and so on. Um, so then you need to discuss where you want to migrate those files. So it might be OneDrive, it might be SharePoint, it might be Teams, or it might be a mix of everything. So what do you want to do with those files? So it's not easy to answer right away, but you first need to have this discussion with the IT team where you think you're going to migrate those files, and uh, and how can you migrate those files? There are several ways to migrate files. You can ask the end users to move their files. You can automate the move of the files with some tools, free tools, or tools you need to purchase, or it's a mix of it. So really you need to define a strategy. And when you lay down everything like that, you need to, I will recommend to build some sort of matrix of scenarios, and you define the pros and cons. So if you're moving, you know, everything in OneDrive and SharePoint with tools, what are the pros and cons of doing that? Do you have a scenario where you will migrate things in Teams? What are the pros and cons with that? Um, will you let people move things around? Maybe you want to migrate first in OneDrive and SharePoint, like for example, OneDrive for personal documents, SharePoint for the documents that are shared, and then you let the end user move their files into their teams when they create the teams. Maybe they need to get mature on teams to better understand where to put things. Um, you definitely want to have this discussion and you know make a decision, or at least present this those scenarios to a number of people where you can have a discussion and make the appropriate decision. There's not always one solution. It depends on how you structure. You also then, I think it's really important before starting to discuss with the people who are gonna be exposed to this migration, um, like for the department owners, you you should do a focus group where you're gonna showcase different technologies, different way you can organize things, different benefits of each solutions. For example, um, I worked with a customer who thought that it would be a good idea to migrate everything in OneDrive because it's super straightforward. You have a folder structure in your file share, you move it in OneDrive, and then it's done. Um, but the problem is when the person who's owning the OneDrive is leaving, then the collaboration doesn't occur anymore. So maybe there were room for SharePoint here, or maybe even for Teams, because Teams is better collaborative environment than SharePoint. So you need to define that and fine tune that. But first, you need to showcase that to the end user, so or to a panel of end users, so they can see what are the options. So they can better make any recommendation if they see what kind of solution what kind of potential solution they can use. So after doing the focus group, I really recommend to meet with the different departments, owners, and have a specific discussion around what they have today, their folders. You know, do they need all their folders? Do they need to clean their folders? Do they need to restructure their folders? And you know, come to this meeting when you discuss with departments with some recommendations, because if you don't have any recommendation, that's going to be a long discussion. If you have some kind of recommendation based on your focus group, you can also they should understand why you made those recommendations, because the focus group now they know what are the tools and how they can leverage it, and then you can fine tune that and say it. That way, this discussion is way easier than if you just asking people how to reorganize things when they don't know what is the solution and what are the pros and cons of the solution. So now they saw that you can discuss that and fine tune how you would like to either reorganize but migrate those files. And it's pretty easy when you make those recommendations, and you can always make some exceptions. Um, and also, I think it's a good thing to through those recommendation is to present before the discussion to the end users. Present some sort of presentation explaining when to use what. What are the recommendations? My recommendation in general is OneDrive for personal documents or draft documents, Teams for living documents. You're still working on living documents, and SharePoint for final documents. That's simple, that's clear. Um, some people might argue, and there's valid points to make some exceptions, but in general, it fits the needs. Then you just have around this framework, you just have to discuss what we found in the file share, in the network drive, where should we put it? I think it's not even where, because you have in the recommendation, you already have an idea where, but how are you going to restructure? Are you going to create a team with several channels and in the channels several folders, or just one channel, or maybe you want a SharePoint? So having this discussion will help you to decide. And then also you can decide, you can show them the different pros and cons of different scenarios. Even if I think if you bring a lot of choices, that will take some time to and take some discussions to find what is the best migration scenario. So I will recommend also to come with one scenario you have in mind, and maybe you can make some exception depending on the context. So when you after you meet with these departments, then you can build your OCM plan. So you need to educate people and you need to communicate. And I like one customer told me there's three things to do: is education, communication, and marketing. So what is the difference between communication and marketing? I thought it was smart. So educating people, I think you cannot educate everybody. At least you cannot really, you cannot connect with people on an individual basis. They cannot train everybody. So you should have some, I think migration is mostly about communication, and sometimes about education for specific needs. And for those specific needs, you should deploy a champions program, so educate champions, so one person per department, and you educate them, you know, what's the migration about, how people can eventually migrate manually some stuff, or after the migration, how they can move documents around. So there's a need for education, but focus on the champions, one per department, and train them, educate them, and the rest of them you need to communicate. So to set the expectation, to understand what's coming when, how they're going to be helped with the champions, where they're going to find their documents, when they're going to start to work in the new environment and not in the old one. Eventually, if you need them to clean before, even if I think that cleaning doesn't bring enough value for people to take the time, it's mostly about a constraint than a benefit. Even if I believe that from time to time cleaning is helpful, but it's hard to manage that. But you can try. You can. Some people will benefit of it, having less information everywhere, especially when you move their stuff in their OneDrive. Um, and so you you build a plan, you execute the plan by educating the champions, communicating to the end users. And when I say educating champions, I think it's it's ongoing process, even on file migration, because maybe first you're gonna move things in OneDrive and SharePoint to make it easy, and you're gonna explain the end user that they can find their file shares just like if they were browsing on the Windows Explorer, their file share, but they can do it on SharePoint, but they have to do something before. They have to install OneDrive client and they have to sync their folders so they can navigate in their folder. You can explain how the OneDrive sync client is working, that all the files are not on their computer unless they ask for it or unless they open the document. So it won't take that much of space. You can, and then later on, you can explain that if they don't want to have those files on the computer anymore because they sync it or for whatever reason, because they open it, because they were part of the project and they sync the documents, and they want to release some space on the computer, then you can educate them how to delete those files without deleting the files for everybody. So there's some education here, and not a lot of people know that. So definitely you need to train people, train the champions how to do that, and also train the champions how to, you know, design a team to host those documents. Maybe if you do that in 2 times, first migration in OneDrive and SharePoint, and second time you ask the end user to create their own team and move those files around. So you need to explain how to move those files into a team, how to create a team, how to organize a team, what are the options. So there's a constant need of education and discussion, and having also an environment where people can ask questions, not waiting to have a meeting to have the answer. That's going to be part of the Champions program. So the file share migration is not just, I move files around and everything is perfect. There's some discussion prior to the migration, some education prior to the migration, some excitement. Marketing is about excitement. Communication is about, when it's going to happen, how it's going to work. Excitement is what are the benefits. So the focus group is part of the excitement because you showcase the potential and all the benefits you can have. And so it's, an OCM process. You first assess the environment, the possibilities, the scenarios. You have some sort of dialogue with some people to decide what is the best scenario. Then you have some discussions with each department to figure out how you're going to apply that, where things are going, how they're going to be migrated, and then you move the documents, and you educate. Finally, you educate and communicate. You educate people how to find their documents, how to move their documents, how to define if the documents should go after the migration into teams, how you organize things. So that's really key to have that in mind. File share migration is not a simple uh, migration, just like if you're dragging and dropping your document somewhere else. Because now, if you do that, first, people need to understand the structure. Second, they need to understand how they're going to navigate in their documents, how they're going to be able to share the documents, so they some education. And obviously, you need to support that with communication to make people understand, the timeline, how it's going to work, and and also what are the benefits. So that's my, let's say, my framework to address fast share migration, and I think it can be helpful. Um, and it's pretty not complex, but it's still a process. As I said, often OCM is a process between people, and and you need to take care of people. You need to understand the process of migration, and I forget the the third piece of the 3P in the approach of OCM: people, process, and whatever it is. Uh, and you have the all the communication and readiness training that you need to put in place. So I hope this insight was helpful. Definitely, a file share migration needs OCM.